Hello, my name is Philip Tanser. I've been a member of the Scottish Family Party for many years. Most of you will probably know me. I also stood in two elections for the Scottish Family Party. I live in Durness, a small village up in the most northwesterly part of Scotland. The topic that I would like to talk about today is called Your Enemy's Enemy is Not Your Friend. And I want to make clear that what I talk about today is not party policy, and it's just my own personal opinion, my own personal views, and it shouldn't be seen as policy making. It should be seen as a warning. And I also don't think that what I'm talking about will get us any votes, but I think it is something that needs to be taken into account for the future of the party and the future of everybody who has conservative views. It's a question of who we want to collaborate with and where our boundaries are. So, your enemy's enemy is not your friend. The Scottish Family Party takes a clear stance regarding transgender and gender ideology, but we are not the loudest, more influential, or most effective group advocating against this transgender ideology. The real fighters in this are the so-called TERFs. The term TERF stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist. The TERFs are our enemy's enemy, but for very different reasons, and they are not our friends by any stretch of the imagination, and they cannot be supported beyond this one issue, which is gender ideology. And almost all issues we address today as Scottish Family Party are, in my opinion, due to feminism's war on man, feminism's war on the family, on motherhood, on femininity, on gender norms, and basic social structures. These sentiments were part of the feminist movement from the very beginning, and even though there were justified grievances that were addressed by these feminists, the reasoning was always vindictive, selfish, hateful, and destructive. Some people, especially women, even in the Scottish Family Party, might disagree or even strongly disagree with this characterization of feminism. But it is the very ideology which brought us mass abortion, no-fault divorce, the sexual revolution, low birth rates, destructive family courts, a society where both parents have to work, a society where boys struggle in education, and where everybody struggles to find a serious relationship. And though it was not exclusively feminism causing all this, they were the main driving force. I often engage online in debates with these so-called TERFs regarding trans women in female spaces, such as locker rooms, toilets, and prisons, for example, and we agree that these spaces should be female only. But as soon as I mention that the current chaos was actually created when feminism destroyed so-called gender norms, these same TERFs aggressively reject any responsibility and blame the trans issue on men oppressing women and on the patriarchy. There lies the problem. While these activists correctly demonstrate against women's spaces being invaded and mothers being reduced to the term birthing people, they still uphold the nonsensical position that gender is a social construct, that men and women are practically the same, while simultaneously hating the whole male gender and blaming everything on man, including female violence. From the early beginning of the women's rights movement, there was a strong tendency not to celebrate the feminine and to promote respect in society towards women and especially mothers, but to turn women into men. At the Labour Party conference last year, A group of radical feminists were kept from attending the conference due to their trans-critical views. The irony is that all of these women looked like men. Biological women who try everything to look and act as masculine as possible were demonstrating against men who try everything to look and act as feminine as possible. We truly live in a bizarre world. Some call it a clown world. These women that were demonstrating, who unsurprisingly enough were lesbians, are deeply concerned about predatory men in women's clothes in female changing rooms and prisons. But they are not at all concerned about lesbian predators in women changing rooms and in prisons. What a surprise! Female prisons have the highest level of sexual violence, far higher than male prisons. And this is true even if there are no trans women in the prison at all. This is all female on female sexual violence. But feminism has always ignored female violence. Lesbian women and bisexual women have the highest rates of domestic abuse within their relationships. Physical and emotional child abuse are predominantly perpetrated by mothers, not by fathers. And in cases of one-directional domestic abuse in heterosexual relationships, the violence is perpetrated by women in 70% of cases. I'm not stating these numbers to paint women in a bad light, not at all. Women, just like men, can do good and can cause harm. But this obvious truth is completely rejected by those who highlight the trans insanity as a woman's issue. The push to normalize transgenderism is not just a woman's issue. It is an issue affecting all of society, women, men, and most of all children. And while these so-called TERFs are against gender ideology indoctrination in school, they push at the same time radical feminist indoctrination in education. Yes, the transgender lobbyists are the most obvious social problem of our time, but they are just a symptom. If trans ideology is Frankenstein's monster, then feminism is Dr. Frankenstein. And though Dr. Frankenstein now hates the monster he created, it was still his moral degeneracy that led to this creation. We cannot let feminism get away with all the destructiveness they cause just because they hate men in dresses. You might ask yourself, why am I even talking about this? Well, let me tell you. In the last 3 years, I have seen more and more collaboration between conservative commentators, news channels, and political parties, and radical feminists to fight against the danger of trans ideology. And while I respect the activism of some of these women, they are still the enemy. The conservative movement is helping radical feminism to win against the intersectional pro-trans feminism, even though both versions of feminism have to be rejected in their entirety. You cannot be a conservative feminist. You can't. There's no such thing as a conservative feminist. Just like you can't be a pro-abortion Christian. And just as many churches are being destroyed by the cancer of wokeness from the inside, the conservative movement is being weakened by the cancer of feminism from inside. A conservative approach to gender equality has to respect womanhood and manhood, motherhood and fatherhood. The fact that we are different but equal in our human value. A conservative approach to gender equality has to put the family in the focus, because this is where we create gender balance in the family unit. thank you very much for listening, and I really do hope that you take this on board, and in the future, when you listen to commentators like J.K. Rowling, who I think does a great job, you have to take into consideration on which side is she standing on in regards to other issues like abortion, family rights, man's rights, or human rights, I would call them. And if these people are only on our side in the area of transgender ideology, then we have to be very, very careful if we want to share a stage with them and if we want to collaborate with them in any shape um, at all. So thank you so much for listening to my talk. God bless you.